What's up, guys? It's Brendan with Electronix.
Is that the new,
Is that the new intro? Yeah.
And I'm Alan. Welcome to another session of Car Audio Q&A. We got a kind of a multi-answer for one particular question. And Brendan's going to go ahead and read that.
The question we have is from Gabriel C. on YouTube. How can you get the most of your amp, subs, and speakers? Any additional accessories? Pretty broad question there.
And it definitely could be answered in multiple ways, but we're going to cover it as if, you know, we don't know what the install looks like, we don't know how it's tuned, etc. So we're just going to kind of go over the things that we feel are important. And I'll kind of start with, obviously, you have an amplifier. So obviously, one, making sure you have the appropriate power wire to power your amplifier. A lot of people wind up using cheap cables. They wind up using aluminum wire instead of copper, oxygen-free copper. They've got crappy grounds, crappy RCAs. So all that's really important with having the right amount of current to your amplifier, good signal from good RCAs, and obviously a good ground and good tuning, since we're kind of at the amplifier. Then I'll let you go to the next thing that you think would be.
Obviously some good speaker wire too, like Alan was saying, some true OFC power wire, and obviously a matching ground size wire to that amplifier. So make sure if you're running 8 gauge, you have an 8 gauge ground. Both that are OFC, that way they're true to size, as well as your speaker wire.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're running new speakers in that car and you want to get the best bang for the buck out of them, typically 16 gauge speaker wire that's OFC is going to be more than enough for that particular application. I typically use 16 gauge speaker wire anywhere between 50 to 150 to 200 watts RMS, and then if you're really pushing a lot of power or running active, you can even step it up to 12 gauge speaker wire, just to make sure you get enough of that power flowing out of the amplifier efficiently to the speaker without any resistance or heating up or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, most factory wires usually 18 gauge. So I mean, you know, I'd say 16 at the minimum in my opinion. If you want to spend a little bit more money, 12 gauge, but sometimes depending on what you're running, it can be overkill. Yeah. 12 gauge woofers is great. Most people are running plenty of power, you know, 1,000 watts, 2,000 watts, whatever. Or even if you're only running 500 watts to your woofer, I mean, it's kind of cool to run. Kind of nice to run some 12 gauge wire, but 16 for the most part between 75 and 100 watts is probably pretty sufficient. Beyond that, I'd probably go to 12 gauge. So that's one thing, is making sure you've got adequate cables throughout the whole system. And then
well, it's just like that. But we just did a boat, guys, and the cables that were in that boat, it was all copper cat aluminum. Obviously they stated it was a 4 gauge, but really it was like an 8 gauge wire. We replaced everything with 0 gauge and true 4 gauge in that boat, and after we retuned it, I mean, it was night and day difference just from replacing cables and power wire.
Yeah, it was funny because before we started, we measured the voltage at the amplifiers, and this guy had like massive battery banks. So it wasn't a problem with the amount of battery power that we had, but when we'd crank it, we were at like 12.5, like, you know, and then we took it apart, replaced all the wire. After we replaced all the crap in it, then we had a pretty steady like 12.5, 13 volts. So you could definitely see where poor cables are going to be starving your amplifier for current, which is going to lead to more heat, clipping, etc.
Or the failure of your amplifier.
Or the failure of your amplifier. Not only that, speakers. You know, it's really nice if you can appropriately install your speakers and have them meet up to the door panel. I like to use a foam little gasket, which I'll go grab really fast while Brendan's talking.
He's going to go grab a foam gasket. Yeah, as Alan was saying, he's either going to make a little baffle or spacer ring out of MDF, seal it off with foam where the back of the actual speaker meets that plate or the door skin itself. Not only that, but on the front of the speaker, where you have the rubber surround on the exterior, that you want to sort of isolate it with foam so it makes the speaker more directional towards the outside of the door panel, because obviously you have a door panel that goes over the speaker and a grill. So when you seal it off with foam, the sound's going to be thrown out of that speaker grill, and it's going to be a lot more directional and sound a lot better. And that's sort of the foam he's talking about right there.
Yeah, there's different thicknesses and different widths that you can buy. This is called Frost King. This is like what we buy at like Home Depot. It's like $10
for like garage doors or
window seals.
Like that, yeah.
And then after we would be done with something, we would just go in a circle around the speaker. So that way when the door panel goes back on, it's got this nice barrier and it sandwiches. Because what a lot of times we see is people buy some nice speakers, they just unbolt the old ones, bolt the new ones in, and there's like a 2-inch gap between the cone of the speaker and the surround to the door panel. So now when you're playing it, sure, you've got a better speaker, but all that sound is going into the door panel when it needs to come out of the grill. So making sure whatever MDF spacers you need to space that speaker out, and whatever gasket. That's why if you notice when you pull the door panels off, most of your nicer vehicles have a pretty hefty factory spacer with a foam gasket and all the way around it, so it meets up to the door panel. In all reality, a lot of times people put in speakers and go, it doesn't even sound as good as my stock ones, and it's because of that. So making sure everything's installed properly. What else?
Sound dampening. You know, when you're in the doors already, making a foam gasket to seal off the speaker from the door skin, as well make it directional to fire out the door panel. You definitely want to add some sound dampening to the inner skin of that door to make it more solid, because you guys have to remember that the door is going to be acting as an enclosure for that mid-range. So the better sealed off it is, the more dampened it is, you're going to get a little bit more warmer and fuller mid-bass out of that component or that coaxial that you're installing into that door or that deck lid, etc.
Yeah.
So, other than that, obviously we amps, subs, and speakers. Make sure you got good power. Obviously, make sure your starting battery is adequate for the amount of power that you're going to be adding to that vehicle with all your car audio equipment. Seal off the speakers properly, run some good wire throughout. And for subs, definitely make sure you build the correct box for that woofer. If not, have one made or get a prefabricated enclosure closest to the specs that subwoofer really wants. And I know Alan's going to go grab us another toy right now. He's digging through the trash can.
I'm grabbing something in the trash here.
Oh, he's grabbing wire. I'm pretty sure he's grabbing wire.
I'm grabbing.
We keep all of our extra wire in a trash can. I'm pretty sure he's about to show you the difference between a CCA and a true OFC 4-gauge wire. Let's pan on over.
Panner, panner, panner. I don't know how well you can see it on the camera, but these are both supposed to be 4 gauges. You can kind of see the red wire on, I guess, what's your left, and the blue on your right. You can definitely see a big difference in how much wire is actually in the jacket. So you have to be careful with what you buy, because a lot of times you think you're buying a particular gauge, but that's not what you're really getting. So you can see this wire off to the right is substantially nicer wire. It's actually a lot more wire than what you get in this red 4 gauge that's supposedly 4 gauge. So another thing too, as Brendan didn't already mention, is besides having the right wire, the right amount of current. So I know he mentioned something about a battery, but sometimes beyond all that, it really may require you getting an upgraded alternator or a secondary battery. So I mean, obviously I can't say specifically, you know, how many batteries or whatnot, because I don't know what the system consists of in this particular, you know, scenario. And you guys be more specific on your questions, because sometimes when you answer them, what kind of speaker should I get? I don't know. How much do you want to spend? You know? So, I mean, if you give us a little bit more information, we can definitely answer the questions a little bit better, because we see the comments like, why didn't you just answer his question? Well, do you want to spend $1,000 on a set of speakers, or do you want to spend 99 bucks? I mean, I've got experience with all of them, but if you want me to give you my best recommendation in a particular price range, I need to know size, I need to know price range, I need to know what kind of power you're putting to them, I need to know a little bit more information, and that goes for all of it. So be detailed.
Type of car that you're putting in, maybe the type of music, the type of existing equipment you have in there already. That way you can give you a little bit more of a detailed answer to your detailed question. And then I think that's about it for the...
what else? What else? I think we just did a video on capacitors, didn't we?
Yes.
So if you already watched that one, you know that we kind of said like we kind of feel they're kind of a little bit of a waste, because if you have adequate power via battery or alternator, that's not something you really need. However, I'm not saying that they don't do anything. It just, if you're going to do it the right way, just do it once and do it right. Let's see. Sometimes OEM speaker location isn't always the best either. Maybe like the placement of where your tweeters install maybe aren't going to be the best for imaging or sound quality. Maybe they need to be moved somewhere else. Maybe you need to do kick panels instead. There's a whole lot that just goes into setting something up besides just bolting it in. Like I know in setups that I've done before, I'll get my mids in the doors because, you know, the door's, you know, pretty decent unless you're going to like a kick panel. Before I'd actually make my tweeter pods, I'd kind of have everything hooked up and kind of move the tweeters around and kind of maybe double stick or make some kind of temporary bracket, and just to kind of listen to it and see what location might sound better, what angle might be better. So there's a lot of stuff that you can really do to tweak to improve. So sometimes factory locations work awesome.
Yeah.
It just depends on the vehicle. Every car is totally different. So,
and a majority of you guys will be using the factory location because it is the easiest to go with. You know, there's rarely any modifications unless you need to cut a little bit to fit that tweeter or that mid-range, and that's usually what most car stereo shops will be using, is the factory location. And as long as you follow the steps that we provided, as in good wire, sound dampening, and sealing off the speaker from that door panel, even if you're using the factory location, you can still get some killer sound quality.
Last thing that I thought of was on there, it said woofer. So there's lots of good woofers out there. There's not one that I'm going to necessarily say to go with, but one of the biggest things, seriously? Who's that? Oh, whatever. One of the biggest things to making any woofer sound good is making sure it's in the right box. Everybody always puts the woofers in the wrong box because they buy the off-the-shelf box that looks like it's close in spec. Going ported, they have no idea what the box is tuned to.
That's what I was saying.
I think we did a video on this one
I was
too.
actually just saying to you guys, you know, obviously you want to build the box to get the most out of your woofer. You're not only building the box for the woofer, but you're building the box for the car. That's the most important right there, to get the best sound quality out of that woofer. Now, if you're on an extreme budget and you can't afford to make a box,
of course pre-built works.
Pre-built will work all day long, but it's not going to suit your woofer to its fullest potential. That's all I have to say.
And neither is, and quite frankly, in my opinion, not even a pre-built like box from a manufacturer, such as like, I don't even want to mention names, but like manufacturers that make their own boxes and subs. There are very few that actually design a box. Well, none of them are designed specifically for that car. It's just a middle of the road formula where that woofer sounds good and performs well, which is the best thing you probably could buy to an off-the-shelf box. Yeah. But if you really wanted to take it one step further, you really would want to design that box and tune it specifically for that vehicle. So there's a whole lot of little detail things, and that's the thing about car audio is you could have two of the exact same car, the exact same laundry list of equipment, two different installers, and depending on the method of the install, both systems, same cars, same equipment, are going to sound completely different.
Mm-hmm. Depends on how that installer tunes, how he installs their equipment,
how he built the box.
Yep.
If he took those extra steps and putting gaskets around the speakers, dampening that door, I mean, there's so many little details that are always overlooked with car audio. I mean, you could take the cheapest speakers and maybe make them sound a lot better, or a cheap woofer. It's just all paying attention to all the little detail along the way. Yeah, you could slap speakers in 20 minutes, but guaranteed if you took 2 hours, made some custom MDF rings, put some foam gasket around the speaker to match up to the door, deadened the door, and took your time, I guarantee you it would sound way better. So exactly. I know it's a lot. There's probably even more, but hopefully that kind of give you some insight to what you could look for even in your own install, and maybe something you could go back to and fix or add. Because I know the equipment's already in, but maybe you want to deaden your doors now and get some Dynamat or something like that and pull it back apart. Maybe you realize you got a big gap in between your mid and your door panel, and you want to go back through and kind of do stuff like this, or space it out. So there's a lot of stuff you can even in a pre-existing system, you can go back through and with a fine-tooth comb and make a hell of a lot better.
I like that, a fine-tooth comb and a laundry list of product. Other than that, guys, this is Brendan with Sonic Electronics. I hope that helped you. Stay tuned. That's it for me.
We'll have more for you next time.
See you later, guys.